Good afternoon. Welcome to the Center for Black Literature and Culture's third anniversary. We are so excited that you have taken time out of your beautiful Saturday afternoon to come and share with us. The last 3 years have been an amazing time, and we wouldn't be where we are right now without the support of everyone in the community, as well as the staff of the Indianapolis Public Library. So thank you all for being here today. We're very excited about the people who will be on program. Our featured artist will be Adrian Matika, Indianapolis' own. We're also going to have Allison Horton, Manon Boyce, Chantel Massey, Two Black, and Ethel McLean. So we have a jam-packed day of writing and poetry, and we're just very excited about that. We're going to start off our program with a small talk from the Indianapolis Public Library Foundation president, Roberta Jaggers. And now, Roberta.
Nichelle, thank you for the warm introduction, and everyone, welcome to this program of the Center for Black Literature and Culture at Central Library. And I'm really looking forward to listening to the rest of the program this afternoon and learning and being part of your program. I wanted to just take a few moments and as Nichelle graciously offered, to share with you all a little bit about the role of the Indianapolis Public Library Foundation. We are the not-for-profit fundraising arm of the Indianapolis Public Library. And so many of you may know that most of the library's programming, including this one today, is made possible by generous private donations from the community. And I just wanted to invite you all that if you would like to help the library to continue to celebrate diverse voices, I would just invite you to consider joining me as a supporter of the Center for Black Literature and Culture. And to give you a sense of the purchasing power of a contribution, a gift of $25 could buy a book. A gift of $100 could help children explore Black heritage through the arts. And a gift of $500 could help a Black author connect with new readers. So to make a contribution to the CBLC, it's very easy. All you need to do is text CBLC to 317-967-9287. That is 317-967-9287. Thank you so much for your time today and enjoy today's program.
My name is Shia Boyd. I'm editor of the Indianapolis Recorder, which is celebrating its 125th year of service to the community. We are proud to be partnering with the Center for Black Literature and Culture and its founding leader, Nichelle M. Hayes. I'm sorry, my video wasn't on. My name is Oshia Boyd. I am editor of the Indianapolis Recorder, which is celebrating its 125th year of service to the community. We are proud to be partnering with Center for Black Literature and Culture and its founding leader, Nichelle M. Hayes, on its third anniversary. It is an honor to introduce four amazing local poets, Allison Horton, Two Black, Ethel Brewer McCain, and featured artist Adrian Matika, serving as moderator. Settle in for a stimulating conversation that will delve into the well of poetic masters. This promises to be a powerful conversation. Sit back and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Oshia. We really appreciate that. And we are so excited and honored to be partnering with the Indianapolis Recorder. And now, without any further ado, our moderated panel will begin.
Peace, everybody, and welcome. Thank you, Ms. Boyd, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Nichelle, for all the work that you've done. I'm serving as moderator this afternoon for this, and it's great because actually I just want to sit and listen to what our esteemed poets have to say about this. The theme of our program today is on whose shoulders we stand. And so I'm asking the other poets involved here to all join us in a conversation about where we came from and how we got started. So I'll just throw this out to begin with. And say that if we could begin. Well, you're there. Okay, so here we go. So here are all of the people we're going to be talking with: Two Black and Chantel, and we're going to be talking with Ethel McCain, and we're going to be talking with Manan, and that's me. so, so if the people on the panel would like to unmute their cameras, so everybody will be able to see you when you speak, that'll give us a little bit of a space to begin with. Awesome. There's everybody. It's so good to see you all. Thank you for agreeing to do this. Maybe Manan, I just saw you first, so I'm going to throw this question out, and then I hope everyone else can answer it, and then we'll just pick up from there. Okay. I've been thinking quite a bit about where we are and how we got here. We have such a robust history of writers in our city, but also of Black writers here in the United States. We're only able to do what we do because of what they have done for us before. So Manan, if you would go ahead, maybe you could start by talking a little bit about who influenced you as a writer, and then also what you've taken from them that might help you to survive right now in this most complicated time. And I'm asking all of you the same question. Who was it that got you moving? And what have you taken from them, both as artists and as sort of activists in the world, that we might be able to share with the people listening?
Sure. Thanks so much, Adrian. And good afternoon to everybody. It's good to see all of these poets that I love and respect in this city. And so thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And first person who came to mind, because I was exposed to poetry very early, so in elementary school. And I often tell this story about getting on the bookmobile, and when you could just get free books. And of course, when you're 7 or 8, you don't know like what you're picking. You're just putting stuff like in the bag. And so I happened to put a book of poetry in the bag that had Maya Angelou. And I had never even really heard of the art of poetry before then. And I remember opening this book, and it was just, some kind of anthology for children. And I remember reading her words and reading Phenomenal Woman and just being ignited, my young self really being ignited by those words. And then discovering that, she was a Black woman like me, that she looked like me. And her words continue to carry me through and really just shape what was possible for me as a writer. One of the things that I love about Maya Angelou is that, it's like certain writers have very distinct styles that they write in, and it's like they kind of do that thing and they master that thing, and you're like, and you know their voice. But if you really look through Maya's work, her poetry, she can really do all kinds of things with it. Like she can go in different, like she can write, very tightly controlled poetry. She can go free verse. She can write stuff that sounds very Shakespearean. And then she can write stuff that sounds very down south, Arkansas stamps, like where she came from. So I love that she had this range, that she was a poet with this wide range. And she was a woman, her poetry, I think, in its wide range also reflected her, right? Because she was a poet, she was a woman who encompassed all these different roles. So she was a poet, she was an educator, she was a journalist, she was a dancer, she was an actress, she produced, she wrote, she directed films, she did all of these things. So she really lived this full, large life. And out of that came such rich poetry, such rich prose. And so she had this remarkable influence on me because of that, because she was such an astonishing poet, but also a woman of range, also a woman of just big range. And depth. And she was also an activist. And so, she was good friends with Jimmy Baldwin, conversations with Jimmy Baldwin, was right there in the civil rights moment and movement, meeting with Dr. King, talking with Malcolm X. That was all a part of her life. And I even think she had a leadership position at one point in SNCC. So she was just a woman who did not separate her art from her activism. It all flowed together. And even with the challenges that she had growing up in Stamps, Arkansas, facing tragedy and abuse, she still found a way to overcome that and give us lasting beauty, right? You wouldn't have known that if she didn't tell us that she faced some of those horrific experiences, because she was able to overcome, she was able to use art as medicine and give that to the world.
That's so beautiful. I love thinking. I just love her work anyway, but also to contextualize it. Like to frame it. This is a life, not just work. Makes a lot of sense to me. I know when we were talking about this, sort of building this program out to begin with. I think almost everyone fit that description in some way or another, but I hadn't thought about it until you described it that way. I mean, Mari Evans absolutely worked in that kind of way. I think, Black, you were talking about Gil Scott-Heron. And so there's this also this connectivity of activism and this connectivity of that history that we've been all bequeathed. Black, maybe you want to talk a little bit about Gil Scott-Heron, because I know that this might be a good place for that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a few poets picked out depending on when you brought me into the conversation. But disclaimer, I got mad sniffles, so I apologize ahead of time. Gil Scott, I guess for me, because I entered into poetry as a performer first. I mean, I was writing before I performed, but as far as like when it became real beyond just being a kid, writing when nobody read anything, and you're just kind of in your own corner. But as far as like having any attention, I entered as a performer, so performing poetry. So Gil stuck out to me for that at the first part, and then I really got into the words, and I got beyond just the revolution will not be televised, because I think it's a great piece, but I actually think it's often misunderstood. So people look at it as just whether the revolution will be on TV or not, and that was not the point of the poem at all. It was a critique of mass, capitalism and marketing, and just the way that people are gifted ideas as opposed to it being more organically inspired. So I think for me with Gil, it was the ability to, he didn't see himself separate of anything. He saw his discipline as being, okay, this is what I'm best at: creative writing, poetry, music, and I'm going to use that to reflect the times that I live in, and that's just a tradition of Black art. So when we talk about, oh, they were political and they were activists, that's just always been what it is. Not everybody, but that's largely been the tradition of Black art since we've been here, and even outside of these borders as well. That's just the tradition that we come from. So I think Gil reflects that, and to the day he died, despite his struggles with drugs and HIV, he always still found a way to put that into his art, and you could hear it in his voice. Even when his voice went raspy and he didn't have the same baritone voice that he had when what a lot of us know him for, he still found a way to make that voice work too. And it still reflected the times. I think his last album was in 2010. So for me, people like that, they laid the foundation for even hip hop. That he lays the foundation for spoken word becoming this big thing years later. Because it was a big thing in the 70s, kind of dies off, goes back underground, and you see it blow up about 15 years ago with Def Poetry Jam and everything. And now it's like this internet sensation and everything like that. But you don't have any of that without Gil. And I think that's another thing with the Black arts is it pushes art in general. It's not just they just push our culture or we just push our culture, but we are the culture. Like we push, not just these American borders, but even outside of that, like we push it. So people are responding to what we do and the work that we put out. And I think that Gil is a great example of that, as well as just launching like really sharp critiques of the political establishment and giving you breadcrumbs to go back and understand the whole time period, because he has poems that are literally stamped in time that give you context of what was going on. And I try to reflect that in my own writing. Like if nobody ever reads anything or hears anything I say, if you go back to my work, at least there are stamps in time to help you understand what was occurring, and somebody that gave you some context outside of maybe a mainstream narrative. And I just think that Gil was good for that.
I think that's really good, man. I think that last album was called I'm New Here.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it was a song on there called Me and the Devil about his
Mhm.
addiction. It was just so intense. And yeah, I'm with you. I teach a class about rap music and poetry, and we start with Gil Scott-Heron and The Last Poets and build out from there, because that's the beginning of all of it, That's really good. Ms. McCain, who did you want to talk about today?
There are so many that upon whose shoulders I've stood, as a writer and as a playwright, and just in creativity in general. But one of my favorite persons is certainly Maya Angelou. I love her, and Still I Rise. I think about today how when poets are speaking within the context of the things that are going on in the world around them at the time. That's something that we can think on today. We're going through some times today that are awesome, that we have never seen before. And this is the time for the poets to think back on the poets who came before us and wrote about the times they were in. And I think this is what we certainly need to do. If anybody should have a say about anything, the politicians have their say. The other writers and certainly those in media have their say. It's time certainly for those of us who create to have our say about these times. Another favorite person of mine, period, is certainly Mari Evans. Mother Mari was awesome. She was awesome in so many ways. And I knew her, and I would visit her sometimes. She was always giving me books. Maybe she thought I needed to read more or whatever, but she was always giving me things. And I took those things, I still certainly have them today. And I think about her different work. I did a poem on her behalf. And if this is the time to do it, I will do it now. If it would rather wait later on in the program, I'll do it then.
Yeah, I think we're going to do that a little bit later.
A little bit later, okay. But anyway, in tribute to her, because when you sat down with Mari, you could never come away from a conversation with her without some wisdom and some newness of thought. And this is why I wrote this poem for her, because she was wise and quiet, but she had her say, and she didn't mind giving you her opinion in her way. And she would correct me a lot, and that was okay. That was okay, because I knew she knew what she was talking about. And that's what I say about us standing on the shoulders of our elders. There were things that they do that they knew that now we know. Some of us are the elders, and that we need to pass this information and these ideas and things, events like this, down to our young people, so they can have shoulders to stand on, if you will. And so Mari Evans, I think about how sometimes I go over to her house and we would sit, and she would talk and talk and talk, and I would soak up everything that she was saying. I love sitting at the feet of the elders, because I have a poem too that writes and says, listen, young people, to the elders. They know things. They knew things, and they spoke about the times. And this is what we need to be doing. If we do anything, we need to speak about these times. Who else but us?
That's right. If we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it, and they're not going to tell the truth.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
That is so wonderful. Thank you for that. I wrote down newness of thought, because now I'm
Yes.
thinking about that. Like, I feel that way when I come to Ms. Evans' work. I feel that way when I come to Maya Angelou's work. Even
Right.
if I've read the poems before, I understand them differently today than I did in the past. You know.
Hey, can I just read a Baldwin quote? Can
Oh,
I
yeah,
read a
yeah.
Baldwin quote real quick? I don't want to cut off. This is just in relation to what was just said. He said, only an artist can tell what it is like for anyone who gets to this planet to survive it, what it's like to die or to have somebody die, and what it's like to be glad. You know, like, I just felt that really fit the conversation.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
that's
beautiful. I mean, every day is a good day for James Baldwin. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's just like I feel that's another one of those things where I come back to it now as, 49 years old, and it looks like a whole different set of words than it did when I was 23. You know what I mean? That's so beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Black, and thank you, Ms. McCain, for that wonderful, those wonderful thoughts. Allison, who you want to talk about?
Body that has been mentioned is certainly an influence of mine. It's hard to really pinpoint maybe my intersection with poetry and those voices, because I came to poetry through music. Really, the poetry and artists like the Isley Brothers, Stevie Wonder. Music played on Saturday mornings when we were cleaning up the house. Deep, soulful, lyrical music that my mother brought to me. And I grew up against the backdrop of hip hop. And so I was all about the rhyme. To be honest, I love nursery rhyme. It started kind of with, Jack and Jill going up that hill, to fetch a pail of water or something like that. But it was always there within me. And I started writing songs before I started writing poetry. And there's something about meeting this rainbow of poets, some of which have already been mentioned in an anthology, and seeing the mirror of a Black touch with language, the Black voice in Langston Hughes, doing something totally different than Robert Frost was doing to me, whom I like, but it's just something about hearing Nikki Giovanni, right? And seeing what they're doing with language and meeting it as not just a tool, but a weapon, and being able to be outspoken, right, and speak the truth from that lens for an introverted person like myself, who was just sitting on ideas and knowing how to push them forward through language. So seeing poetry maybe first on paper or on the page gave me a sense of how it performed so powerfully there, because that's how I first met many of these poets, even Mari Evans. And I was in Bloomington, and I didn't even know that this hidden treasure, right, was in Indianapolis. And I was first given Etheridge Knight in college. And he was so deep and just so gritty and beautiful and just real. And probably his experiences, some have mentioned even a favorite poet of mine, Feeling Effed Up by Etheridge Knight, just showed me like, wow, you really have some leg room in poetry. But I thought I wasn't ready for Etheridge Knight yet. Then somebody gave me his haiku, and I was all over that. So, understanding a master's touch with the haiku. My favorite, making jazz swing in 17 syllables ain't no square poet's job. And so I hear the invitation to meet haiku in that way. I hear the call. I hear the pride in his mastery of it, and knowing that, I'm from Indianapolis too, so I feel the haunt of having to meet the haiku in that same kind of way. So totally eclipsed any other presentation of haiku, which basically said deal with nature and seasons and climates. And I'm meeting poets who were dealing with the climate of the times, right? The Black experience and Black Lives Matter right? These moments, and just getting submerged in that. And so I've always kind of met the page from a speak the truth to the people kind of way, or at least felt like it was my calling to do that. And meeting Mari Evans, I would definitely say, just like Sister Ethel said, meeting her when I came back here from Bloomington, through Donna at Expressions Bookstore, understanding the circular power of these poets and however they intersected our lives, whether it was on page or on stage, like Haki Madhubuti, watching him, Donnell Lee, all the Black Arts Movement poets, the last poets. That just was more music to my ears and my soul, and just trying to maybe mirror that, right? Join the conversation, live up to that culturally was something that was important to me. Meeting Mari Evans at the time that I did, like post college, thinking I was, already, doing the work, right? And then somebody saying, asking me, to ask myself whether or not I want to be a writer or a personality. So something about Mari Evans, right, straightened up, right? I would say my walk, maybe as a poet, as a Black poet, unapologetically Black, and the use of language, that sharp use of language, the economy of language. Lucille Clifton, right? She did that. So, where it meets Mari Evans is the time in my life where Donna took this young poet and deliberately placed me in the path of Mari Evans to give me an opportunity to work in a library. So here I am, pretty much basking in the beauty of this person I'm discovering, right, in real time. Anytime you dealt with Mari Evans, you were in real time, or you had better be, because she was just going to kind of require that of you. And I feel deeply grateful for those interactions. It was through Mari Evans that I officially met Haki Madhubuti at the funeral of her oldest son, Evan. And he showed up and spoke and represented the Black Arts Movement, and took me very seriously as Ms. Evans did. But Ms. Evans wasn't trying to make me into some poet. She was definitely somebody who wanted you to be like who you were, and not just be something that you had seen. She's somebody who basically said a poem is finished when you decide it's finished. So all this other stuff, this training that seems to be a part of it, it's really also about tapping into you and having that impulse, and having that purpose, that identity that she had of not just a poet, but being a political writer, says something, right? And so I would say my interaction with her, and any other poet I've had the opportunity to be in the midst of, even if it was just on page, was to try to see myself, see my purpose through it, and to join the conversation and the continuum of that particular work.
That's beautifully said. I want to just co-sign what you were saying too about Donna and about bookstore. That bookstore was so important to me, still is so important to me, even though it exists in our imaginations and in metaphor. I know Donna shows up and shares books at the events at the Center for Black Literature and Culture sometimes too. But it meant so much in the ways that you're talking about. I think that's where I found Yusef Komanyaka's work, was there. So I think that was the first place I ever bought one of Mary Baraka's books. Like, I'd never seen a space that was just for all Black writers. Because the only thing that was before was like at half price books, that one shelf that's like this of Black literature, and it's self-help books, and maybe one book of Gwendolyn Brooks or something. Like, there's just nothing on that shelf. So I'm sure it's all valuable in one way or another, but I was looking for James Baldwin. I was looking for, I didn't know I was looking for Mari Evans yet, because nobody had shown me. So I think it sounds like in some ways that is a similar experience for all of us. It's maybe a metaphoric learning, right? A metaphoric standing on the shoulders, but also a literal and actual one where we've been lucky enough to engage with these elders and have them just here. Look, I know you think you know something, but here it is. Read, go tell it on the mountain. Here it is. Go read in the Mecca. It's time for you to figure these things out. Read, I am a Black woman. So now that's really, hey, listen, thank you all so much for sharing your words with us, and also the wonderful litany of Black poetry. I hope everybody was taking notes. You need to read Gil Scott-Heron. You got to go back to see Maya Angelou. You got to go back, and we're going to talk about Maury Evans and Etheridge Knight more today. We need to talk about Baldwin. We need to talk about Hadi Makabuti and so many people, right? So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I am just blown away by everything that these amazing, amazing poets shared. And if you were listening, even partially conscious, you were witnessing a masterclass. I will have to go back and look at my notes and listen to this again to really unpack this the way I need to. But I'm just excited and awed to be in this company. To have this talent here in Indianapolis. And like I say all the time, you don't have to go outside of 465 to get talent. It's right here in our own backyard. So what I'm hoping is that people will support them and pour love on them as they continue to do this work. And I see poetry as resistance. And so without any further ado, we are going to go with our next poet, and that is Manon Boyce. And we are going to let her come in her own way. She's an adult, so she can speak for herself. And so I will let her introduce herself. Go ahead, Manon.
Thanks so much again. I'm a poet and spoken word artist and educator right here from the city of Indianapolis. Very, very proud to be standing with this outstanding community of poets and writers and people right here on this virtual event today, who I look up to and truly, truly admire. And so the poem that I'm going to recite, I actually wrote this poem the day that I found out that Mother Maya had passed away. And it wasn't even anything that I planned on releasing to the public. It was really for me. It was really my way of kind of making peace. I remember being at work and I got the notification on my phone that she passed away, and I was in like a meeting, and it felt like it felt like my grandmother had passed away. That's how much she meant to me, and that's how much her work meant to me. It felt like a light just went out of the world. And so as soon as I got home, I remember going in my room and writing this poem, and it was just a tribute to her life and her impact on me. And this is actually a poem that I do often at the beginning of my poetry sets, just to pay homage to the great ancestral lineage of poets like Maya, and on whose shoulders I stand and whose shoulders we all stand. So this is a poem that just talks about the full life that she led, and in all of her brilliance, in all of her genius. She was a full, phenomenal woman. Mother Maya, you made the dream of humanity visible. You made the dream of humanity visible. Our souls felt possible beneath the strong stampede of stallions we called the world. You opened our cages and freed us to sing. Born with a bow and an arch in your back, you would spring, overcome mouthless terrors. Greet every still rising with notebook tied to hip and pen, giving birth to son and to daughters' letters. Mystic poet Maya, Shakespeare wrote for you and you for us. Discover the unfounded language of our native tongues. Permission for us to find our voices. Peel back the husk of words with grit and pen. Grit and pen wrote here. Here is what it looks like to light, to shine, to be born again of word and spirit, O brethren and sistern of nations. Phenomenal Maya, the bronze pillar-leg dancer who shook all over the world with calypso rhythm and blue laughter. You sang in the deep bellow of our earth mothers and fathers whose black backs were stacked, buried in the bottom of fretful ships. We heard our truth forgotten selves in the sweetness of your timber. And like flickering street lanterns from down in the deltas of Mississippi to the cotton plantations of Cuba, fled home, teacher, educator, professor, Maya, respected alike by Catholic and Confucian, Sikh and Sufi, Imam and Rabbi. You came trailing white wisp of light and left with the silver wisdom of sages who anointed your strengthening age with grace. You gave meaning to human, color to soul, meaning to human, color to soul, meaning to human, color to soul. Ours who now looks back and wonder, find ourselves loved on by God in the clay face of a Black woman we called Maya. Revolutionary activist Maya who stood beside kings and honorable men exed by assassinations. You pumped your Black fist and wore the bandana of justice around radical threads, wrote a cabaret in the chorus of our freedom, said we all bleed the same. Red man, Black man, white man, yellow man, all gathered under the same colored sun on the pulse of a morning 1991, united by common salutations of blood, voice, and power. Once you spoke, you would speak forever. Once you spoke, you would speak forever, our dearest Marguerite. Egypt and Ghana now weeps, stamps Arkansas, San Francisco, California, Harlem, New York, and the women of the Mende tribe do dance. For your hour has come. Nelson Mandela extends his hand and says, come up higher, sister. King sees his old friend, his eyes rejoice. Jimmy Baldwin just, girl, what took you so long? Billie Holiday wants you to sing her a song. Vivian Baxter says, see, I told you, Maya, you are the greatest woman that I would ever come to know. Brother Bailey says, finally, sister, finally, my queendom come. And the God of our ancestors greets you and says, welcome home and well done. Thank you.
Ashe. Thank you so much. We appreciate that heartfelt piece, and it was very moving. Thank you so much. There's a lot more that we have for today. I'm so pleased that we have these amazing artists here who are pouring out to us and sharing with us and giving something for us to hold on to as we navigate these challenging times. Our next poet will be the artist Too Black, and I will let him introduce himself for you. Thank you so much.
What's good? Yeah. So I'm a spoken word poet, educator. Not gonna spend much time on my bio. Today I want to talk about or do a poem of Gil Scott, but just the concept here is the blues. And I think considering the moment we're in, the blues is highly relevant. But Black people have a unique history of navigating the blues. We didn't invent the blues. That's the country we live in, but uh, we do know how to navigate it. And I think there's something we can learn from our ancestors of how they navigated it and what they had to say about it. And just a quick reference. This isn't Gil Scott, but another good reference if you just want to really understand the history of the blues is Blues People, Negroes in White America. It's written by Amiri Baraka when he went by Leroy Jones, and he tracks the history of blues pretty much with the history of Black people in America and what that and how the music shifted with the experiences that we were having. So I just want to shout that out real quick. But this poem is rather long, so I don't want to talk too long. So I'm going to get this going. This one is called Bicentennial Blues. This is a poem by Gil Scott on his album It's Your World. It's Your World was really deep into him just reciting poetry more so than him doing music. So this one actually didn't have any recordings I could find, didn't have any music to it, but let's go. Some people think that America invented the blues, and few people doubt that America is a home of the blues. And the bluesicians have gone all over the world carrying the blues message, and the world has snapped its fingers and tapped its feet right along with the blues people. But the blues has always been totally American as apple pie, as American as the blues, as American as apple pie. The question is why? Why would the blues be so at home here? Well, America provided the atmosphere. America provided the atmosphere for the blues, and the blues was born. The blues was born in the American wilderness. The blues was born on beaches where slave ships docked, born on the slave man's auction block. The blues was born and carried on howling wind. The blues grew up a slave. The blues grew up a property. The blues grew up in Nat Turner's visions. The blues grew up in Harriet Tubman's courage. The blues grew up in small town deprivation. The blues grew up in big city isolation. The blues grew up in the nightmares of the white man. The blues grew up in the blues singing of Bessie and Billy and Ma. The blues grew up in Satchmo's horn, on Duke's piano, on Langston's poetry, on Robeson's baritone. The point is what blues has grown. The blues is grown now, full grown, and you can trace the evolution of the blues on a parallel line with the evolution of this country, from Plymouth Rock to acid rock, from 13 states to Watergate. The blues is grown, but but not home. The blues is grown, but the country has not. The blues remembers everything the country forgot. It's a bicentennial year, and the blues is celebrating a birthday. It's a bicentennial blues. America has got the blues, and it's a bicentennial edition. The blues view might amuse you, but make no mistake, it's a bicentennial year. A year of hysterical importance, a year of historical importance, ripped off like donated moments from the past, 200 years ago this evening, 200 years ago last evening. And what about now? The blues is now. The blues is growing up and the country has not. The country has been ripped off like the Indians, ripped off like jazz, ripped off like nature, ripped off like Christmas, manhandled by the media overkill, goosed by aspiring vice presidents, violated by commercial corporations. A bicentennial year. The year the symbol transformed into a BUY centennial. Buy a car, buy a flag, buy a map, until the public as mass has been bludgeoned into bicentennial submission or bicentennial suspicion. I fall into the latter category. It's a blues year, and America has got the blues. It's got the blues because of partial deification, of partial accomplishments over partial periods of time, halfway justice, halfway liberty, halfway equality. It's a half year. And we should be silly in our knowledge, in our self-righteous knowledge, when we sit back and laugh and mock the things that happen in our lives to accept anything other less than the truth about this bicentennial year. And the truth relates to 200 years of people and ideas getting by. It got by George Washington. The ideas of justice, liberty, and equality got cold by George Washington, slave owner general. Ironic that the father of this country should be a slave owner. The father of this country, a slave owner. Having got by him, it made it easy to get by his henchmen, the creators of this liberty, who slept in the beds with captains of slave ships, fought alongside Black freedom in the Union Army, and left America's legacy of hypocrisy. It's a blues year. Got by Gerald Ford, oatmeal man. He declared himself at odds with people on welfare, people who got food stamps, daycare children, the elderly, the poor, the women, and people who might vote for Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, it got by him. Holly weird, acted like an actor, acted like a liberal, acted like General Franco when he acted like the governor of California. He acts like somebody might vote for him for president. It got by Jimmy Carter, Skippy, got by Jimmy Carter and got by him and his friend, the Colonel, the creators of Southern Fried Triple Talk, a blues trio. America's Got the Blues. It got by Henry Kissinger, the international godfather of peace. A piece of Vietnam, a piece of Laos, a piece of Angola, a piece of Cuba, a blues quartet. And America got the blues. The point is it may get by you for another 4 years, for another 8 years. You stuck playing second fiddle in the blues quartet. Got the blues looking for the first principle, which is justice. It's a blues year for justice. It's a blues year for the San Quentin Six, looking for justice. It's a blues year for Gary Tyler, looking for justice. It's a blues year for Reverend Ben Shavers, looking for justice. It's a blues year for Boston, looking for justice. It's a blues year for babies and on buses. It's a blues year for mothers and fathers with babies on buses. It's a blues year for Boston, and it's a blues year all over the country. America has got the blues, and the blues in the street looking for the three principles: justice, liberty, and equality. We would do well to join the blues looking for justice, liberty, and equality. The blues is in the street. America has got the blues, but don't let it get by us. Thank you. And I will close with that. I don't think there's anything else I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Black. We appreciate that. If you want somebody to speak truth to power, Black is the person to do that for you. And I think him bringing that poem definitely did that. And I will let her come forward. She is a playwright. She is a poet, an author, and also a genealogist. Miss Ethel.
Hello again. This has been an awesome experience for me, being on this stage, this virtual stage with so many wonderful and creative brothers and sisters. I have a tribute to share from one of my favorite poets, Maury Evans. And as I said before, anyone who's ever met Maury Evans and talked with her would never come away from the conversation without some measure of wisdom, a new way of thinking about things, I say. She had a manner of renewing one's mind, and I found her to be a no-nonsense, common sense person of quiet dignity. In February 2014, I was honored to write this tribute to this amazing woman. Inspired by her work, I Am Black Woman, I share. Woman warrior Maury. There's always newness needed in the world, you see. I said newness needed in the world. Our souls burn for new ways of looking at life and learning from life and living and giving it meaning. Yes, there's always newness needed in the world, you see. And often few who make us think and drink from creativity anew. But then there were those wizards of the written word, speakers of the spoken word, always on the battlefield for a better world, a newness of this world. Today, again, we pay tribute to woman warrior Maury, her weapons, pen, and voice. The voice sometimes soft, sometimes firm, always filled with a new way to have her say. Woman warrior Maury, who fought for right wherever wrong grew like weeds among the world's flowers, like weeds among the world's flowers. This woman warrior who served up creativity, her soul wrapped around it, sharing wisdom with world needing to hear more and read more and heed more and see more, laugh more and be more in sync with sanity. Woman warrior Maury, whose pen has been around the world, a pen poised for capturing a new thought, wrought from brilliant mind, a mind that made music, penned poetry, dreamt drama on stage, and waged war against ignorance and empty-mindedness. Woman warrior Maury, who had a new way of looking at life and learning from life and living and giving it meaning. Yes, there's always a newness needed in the world, you see. We celebrate again today woman warrior Maury and the spirit of her pen, touching every part of everything she ever knew, her wisdom trickling down on paper to ever be taught and read and recited and reiterated and relished and remembered forever and remembered forever. An amazing woman who used poetry to praise heroes, commentary to claim justice for victims without voice. Woman warrior Mari, whose face adorns a nation's postage stamp. Today, again, we pay tribute as deserved, for she was Black woman, tall as a cypress, strong beyond all definition, still defying place and time and circumstance, assailed, impervious, indestructible person, Mari. Again, after you've crossed over now, again though, we look upon your life and become renewed. And that was what I shared with her at that time. I have a second piece that deals with basically speaking and knowing where home is. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home. Somewhere deep down in the pit of me lies the spirit of Mother Africa. She has laid quietly in the recesses of my being, and I have allowed her to do so. Often to be politically and aesthetically correct in this society, you know. One can go around spouting one's heritage from the darker land. One could be ostracized and politicized and very highly criticized for being too much into that Black thing, you know. Do Black lives really matter in America? As I've assimilated 400 years of myself into this land, America, I've pressed hair into willful obedience and pressed on through civil obedience and become depressed, watching civil rights become civil wrongs, but knowing all along that Black lives do matter. I have bleached beautiful Black skin and powdered it again and again and again till it emerged an acceptable hue. I've adjusted my tongue to the proper language of my captors. But somewhere deep inside of me lies the spirit of Mother Africa. She is that still voice whispering for me to not forget who I was while being who I am. She is that subtle spirit that emerges from deep inside of me to make me claim the all of me you see. She is the quiet spirit that rises up out of me and spreads around me to remind me to tell our young who they've been and who they can be. And that, yes, they matter. Deep inside of me lies the spirit of Mother Africa, reminding me every now and then that we did not just pop up out of the ground like so many dandelions, that we must remember our past to control our present and reset the future, that we must embrace. And as we embrace and assimilate and bleach body and press hair and press on in America, Mother Africa still says we are still a long way from home. And with that sharing, I'm finished for now.
Thank you so much, Miss Ethel. No other words are needed. That was so powerful and so moving. This is just such a blessing to be here with these talented artists and having them pour into us. Thank you so much. Our next artist will be Allison Horton, who is the author of Quickfire. She is an Indianapolis native and a graduate of Indiana University as well as Butler University. Allison, go ahead and take it away.
Here we go. I'm sorry. For my segment, I was kind of torn, mostly because I'm a Libra. And so I was trying to figure out what poem I should read. Of all the poems I could read, of the two poets I've chosen, that's Professor Haki Madhubuti and Mari Evans. I feel like my path has been bookmarked by those two writers. So I emailed Professor Madhubuti and asked, like, which one of your poems would you like for me to read in this program? If I could read any of your poems. And I hoped he was going to say, But He Was Cool, or Don't Cry Scream, some of the classics, some of my favorites from the Black Arts Movement. But he reminded me that he's still writing. He's 50 years plus, right, ongoing in this struggle, and certainly has had books since those favorites. And speaking of books, new books, I am definitely going to push this one, Taught by Women. It's his latest book, all in tribute to women. Cover spread with a roster of impactful women. And I will say to my dear Nichelle, there's a poem in here in tribute to you in here, and even Donna is listed on the inside cover. So we're talking about somebody who definitely celebrates those whose shoulders he stands upon and who has impacted his journey. And there are so many other names, but mostly and mainly for him, is Gwendolyn Brooks. And so he wants me to read a poem in dedication to her. And it's from this new book, Taught by Women. It was published in a poetry magazine, and it's my honor to read it. It's in keeping with today's theme, and so it was settled that I would read this one of his work. It's entitled Gwendolyn Brooks, America in the Winter Time. In this moment of orangutans, wolves, and scavengers, of high heat redesigning the North and South poles, and the wanderings of new tribes in limousines, with the confirmations of liars, thieves, and get-over artists, in the wilderness of Pennsylvania Avenue, standing rock misspelled executive orders on yellow paper with crooked signatures. Where are the kind language makers among us? At a time of extreme climate damage, deciphering fake news, alternative truths, and meism, you saw the 21st century and left us not on your own accord or permission. You have fought and fought most of the 20th century, creating an army of poets who learned and loved language and stories of complicated rivers, seas, and oceans. Where is the kind green nourishment of kale and wheatgrass? You thought, wrote, and lived poetry, knew that terror is also language based on denial, firstism, and rich cowards. You were honey and yes to us, never ran from Black as in bones. Africa, blood, and questioning yesterdays and tomorrows. We never saw you dance, but you had rhythm. You were a warrior before the war, creating earth language, uncommon signs and melodies, and did not sing the songs of career slaves. Keenly aware of Tubman, Douglas, Wells, Barnett, Du Bois, and the oversized consciousness and commitment of never quit people, religiously taking note of the bloodlust enemies of kindness. We hear your last words. America, if you see me as your enemy, you have no friends. Thank you. My next piece is definitely, I would say, Mari Evans' most reflective piece for me, entitled I Am a Black Woman. And, I'm really honored to be part of this program, and I'm getting an opportunity to read this poem of hers. I am a Black woman. I am a Black woman. The music of my song, some sweet arpeggio of tears, is written in a minor key, and I can be heard humming in the night, can be heard humming in the night. I saw my mate leap screaming to the sea, and I with these hands cupped the life breath from my issue in the cane breath, in the cane break. I lost Nat's swinging body in a rain of tears and heard my son scream all the way from Anzio for peace he never knew. I learned nong and pork chop heel in anguish. Now my nostrils know the gas, and these trigger tired fingers seek the softness in my warrior's beard. I am a Black woman, tall as a cypress, strong beyond all definition, still defining place and time and circumstance. Assailed, impervious, indestructible. Look on me and be renewed. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. We've just been honored by all the artists that have been shared today. And what I would encourage everyone to do is to be taking some notes and jotting down the names of artists if you've not heard of them before, and these works that have been shared, because this is definitely something for us to look back on. Because we want this program to be something that you can use to help you in the days ahead. We know this is a challenging year and that the year is not over and that the challenges are not over. And so we do see poetry as a form of resistance. So with that, I will introduce and I will call him my good friend and supporter of the Center for Black Literature and Culture. Adrian has, from day one, even before we were even a physical space, when we were just a grant proposal, he has really encouraged the idea of the Center for Black Literature and Culture, and his challenges growing up here in Indianapolis and looking for those Black authors, as he was speaking of before, and being able to go to expressions and having that be a place where he could find the Black authors. But we felt like the Indianapolis Public Library should also be that place. And so we are going to let our featured author, Adrian Matika, come in his own way.
Peace, everybody. It's so great to be here. Thank you, Michelle, for you being you and for all the work you do for literature and for readers and writers here in the city. It's a totally different place now that the Center for Black Literature and Culture exists. I've written some words inside of my talk about it because I couldn't find the right way to express my gratitude for that space. Thanks to my poets in arms for their grace and their generosity. I'm just stunned by the lyricism and by the power of the words you shared. It's wonderful to be here celebrating with all of you, even though I wish we could be in three-dimensional space together. So I'm gonna, I've written a little talk that I'm gonna read, and it also includes some video and audio of some poets reading. So I'll have to switch back and forth from the screen. We're also well acquainted with Zoom now, so you know what a complication that is, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. I'm so grateful to be here in the presence of these brilliant poets at the Center for Black Literature and Culture virtual version, a space built on the words of the many writers of the Black diaspora who have come before us and who have done the tough megaphone work, the tough protest work, the kind of rough-knuckled work necessary to make a place for me, for all of us really, to write poetry that can be a protest or a homily. Poetry can be a bright freedom narrative unless it wants to be something else. Poetry can be a manifesto against our corrupt government and its oppressive systems, unless it wants to be going in a different direction. So many possibilities in poetry and prose for Black writers because of the work of those who came before us. I'm going to say that again because I think it's the center of our conversation today. We only get to do the work we're doing because of those who came before us. It'd be easy to be the poetry equivalent of a trust fund kid now, given everything that my elders and their elders in the Black literary community have done to make things easier for me. The first work of Phyllis Wheatley and Jupiter Hammond, the Renaissance work of Langston and Zora and Toomer and Gwendolyn Bennett, the South Side of Chicago work, the relentless community space work of Gwendolyn Brooks. You know, she was one of 4 Black women to win the Pulitzer Prize. Then Rita Dove, and then Natasha Trethway, and then Tracy K. Smith. Think about that. In over 100 years of Pulitzer Prizes, there have been 4 Black women who have won it. And in some kind of weird, ironic symmetry, there have also been 4 Black men who have won it. And 3 of those Black men won it since 2015. Either the Pulitzer Prize folks are catching up or they're trying to make up. But you got to know that the fix was in since now we're standing back and looking at this thinking Robert Hayden didn't get this, Mari Evans didn't get this, Lucille Clifton didn't get this, Amiri Baraka left this earth without the prize. But thanks to the work of those giants, whether they were being received by the white literary establishment or not, I have a space to work. I have a space to share my words and to receive the words of others. But to be laissez-faire about that space would be dismissive of the work of all these poets I just mentioned. There's a litany of them, and it would be disrespectful and it would be a disservice if I didn't try to do what I could. The Black arts movement called it for a new, more unrepentant version of Black art. Like Amiri Baraka said in his poem, Black Art, and excuse my language here, poems are bullshit unless they are trees, or their teeth or trees or lemons piled on a step, or Black ladies dying of men leaving nickel hearts beating them down. That's what I'm talking about. Now that's the kind of poetry I'm interested in. Black arts movement poets like Eugene B. Redmond, the lifetime poet laureate of East St. Louis, a man who founded the Black Studies program at the first university I taught at, and who showed me how to survive in the academy and on the page when I was coming up. Or Melba Joyce Boyd, who schooled me on prosody and extracurricular hustles happening right in front of me. She lives in Detroit. So did Dudley Randall, who wrote poems and published so many of our heroes through his publishing company, Broadside Press. Naomi Long Madgett and her astonishing poetry and work at Lotus Press, that's also in Detroit. It's fitting that both Broadside and Lotus continue on together as Broadside-Lotus Press, and they can this day make spaces and amplify Black voices. I was fortunate to meet Ms. Long Madgett, and she told me a story about watching Jack Johnson training for a fight when she was a kid. There's poetry in that too. Baba Haki Madhubuti, who we mentioned earlier, and he was inspired through his powerful verses and editorial acumen at his publishing company, Third World Books. Like Allison said, he's still building, he's still fighting and making spaces for Black poetry. Baba Haki let me spend as much time as I wanted to in the Third World archives. It was a gorgeous experience, and I soaked up so much Black art, I thought I might burst like a star. That's Black generosity. That's Black poetry right there. I know I'm naming a lot of names, and I hope you're keeping track because there's so many more that I could be naming and I'm missing out. Sonia Sanchez, who taught me more in one conversation about Muhammad Ali than all the documentaries and books I'd ever read. Did you know that Sonia Sanchez and Muhammad Ali did a poetry reading together in the New Orleans Superdome? Imagine that. Poetry, Black poetry, being received in such a way that they had to have it. They had to host it in a space that's usually reserved for football. That's Black poetry right there. Or Gwendolyn Brooks, again, who turned her back on the white publishing establishment, that has consistently ignored Black readers, to take her words directly to the Black community through Broadside Press and then later through Third World Books. I don't know if it's clear to contemporary audiences what risks Ms. Brooks was taking at that time. At that time, in the 60s, early 60s, Broadside and Third World were one-man operations. Just Dudley Randall working in his basement, Baba Haki working in his basement, producing chapbooks. And so poetry has always been a really tenuous occupation financially, as the poets on this call can attest to. So to imagine walking away from the comfort and security financially of these big publishers on the East Coast to make a run with a Black independent publisher, it takes courage. And it's not an easy thing to do at all. But as you know, from having read Ms. Brooks' work, she wasn't about doing the easy thing. I want to tell you a quick story about Gwendolyn Brooks before I continue. I was fortunate enough to hear her read when I was in college at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. it was a place called Schrock Auditorium, and the auditorium was filled to the rafters with people. There were these kids in their school uniforms and people smiling and laughing and clutching copies of Ms. Brooks' books. Just everybody was so intensely joyous about the opportunity to hear her read. And she mostly read poems written by children who she worked with as poet laureate during her very long tenure. And these were beautiful poems written by grade school students and children who maybe before that had not written poetry. And when she got finished reading and telling these stories and sharing her wonder with all of us, she sat down at a table and started signing books. It was about 9 o'clock at night. And she sat there signing books until 1:30 in the morning. She said she stayed in that seat and made sure that every single person who was waiting got the chance to talk with her and sign get a book signed if they wanted one. So I should probably say this was maybe a month or two before she transitioned. So she was an elder in a lot of different ways. And I can't imagine how difficult, that'd be hard for anybody to sit like that. But she loved the work and she loved poetry so much, she stayed and did that. I'm sharing that story because I think it speaks to the tenacity of Ms. Brooks and the resilience of her poetry. Their reading, like I said, was a few months before she died. And it was more important to bring joy to people than it was and to build space for people than it was maybe to go get to sleep like she probably should have. She wasn't just writing about it, she was living it. So I want to share one of my favorite poems of Ms. Brooks. It's a poem called Second Sermon on the Warpland. And I'm going to bring up a slideshow so that people can read it. And also I'm going to play a recording of it. I couldn't find one of Ms. Brooks reading it, but I found one of Elizabeth Alexander, who was President Obama's first inaugural poet, reading the poem. And I think it's an excellent version of it. The poem comes from Gwendolyn Brooks' brilliant book, In the Mecca. And I hope you'll enjoy this one. Let's see. I say that and then I can't get it to share. I hope I don't have to read it because I don't do nearly as good a job as she does. All right, I got it. To everybody's, I think, the betterment for everyone listening. Okay. So there she is, the first poet laureate, the first Black poet to win the Pulitzer Prize and almost lifelong poet laureate of Chicago. Some people make the mistake of imagining that Carl Sandburg is the poet of Chicago, but those of us who know about poetry know better. So here's the poem.
1. This is the urgency. Live, and have your blooming in the noise of the whirlwind. 2. Salvage in the spin. Endorse the splendor splashes. Stylize the flawed utility. Prop a malign or failing light, but know the whirlwind is our commonwealth. Not the easy man who rides above them all. Not the jumbo brigand. Not the pet bird of poets. That sweetest sonnet shall straddle the whirlwind. Nevertheless, live. 3. All about are the cold places. All about are the pushmen and jeopardy, theft. All about are the stormers and scramblers, but what must our season be which starts from fear? Live and go out. Define and medicate the whirlwind. 4. The time cracks into furious flower, lifts its face all unashamed and sways in wicked grace. Whose half-black hands assemble oranges, is tom-tom hearted, goes in bearing oranges and boom. And there are bells for orphans, and red and shriek and sheen. Our garbage man is dignified as any diplomat. Big Bessie's feet hurt like nobody's business, but she stands bigly under the unruly scrutiny, stands in the wild weed. In the wild weed, she is a citizen and is a moment of highest quality, admirable. It is lonesome, yes, for for we are the last of the loud. Nevertheless, live. Conduct your blooming in the noise and whip of the whirlwind.
I love that poem so much. Conduct your blooming in the noise and the whip of the whirlwind. Ms. Brooks knew the urgency is the engine to uplift, whether it's the personal uplift or community uplift, or in some moments like this, like right now, when we've been suffering in year 4 of a misbegotten administration. It's hard just to keep your head uplift. It's hard sometimes to bloom in that whirlwind while a red-faced wannabe autocrat kicks his feet up in a house built by slaves. I don't want to go too far away from this, but sometimes our elders' poetry expects loudness from us. How can I sit quietly with a whole lineage of Black poets urging me to protest? Chicago had Ms. Brooks and Carolyn Rogers, still has Angela Jackson and Baba Haki. Detroit had Robert Hayden and Dudley Randall, and still has Melba Joyce Boyd and Naomi Long Madgett. Indianapolis has a deep history too. I haven't even mentioned Mari Evans yet, or Etheridge Knight, because they're who I'm going to be talking about going forward. They came to Indianapolis differently, but both poets are of this place. Ms. Evans was a Midwesterner hailing from Detroit, Toledo, Ohio. She lived in Indianapolis for almost 70 years, watching the city go from segregation with separate spaces marked coloreds and whites to a city which, according to her, people didn't even look at each other. She was here when our city went from that version, people not looking at each other, where segregation, to one where segregation is baked in, but as she said, is at least a place where people smile at each other now. Her original passion was music, and anybody who has luxuriated with her words can hear the jazz underneath them. She was a poet, though I've heard a few times that she didn't particularly like being called that. So when I'm thinking of her as a poet, I'm thinking of a poet's sensibility, to see the world for what it really is, not what they want you to think it is, to look at the spaces that other people don't want to look. She applied that same sensibility to her children's books and to her plays, to her musical compositions and to her essays. She's a poet in spirit and a Renaissance woman in practice. Maya Angelou said that Mari Evans told the whole truth, the poetic truth, the truth for and about the people. And you can see it in her poems. They are candid about the violence and inequity perpetuated by these systems on Black people. She's direct about the history of governmental terrorism and of slavery and the incessant murder of Black children in America. Her poems spoke to us and for us with words that mystify even as they clarify, and they have always honored and revered those who came before her. When I started writing this, I wasn't aware that Mari Evans was born in 1919. I knew she lived a long and robust life, but think about this. She was born the same year the 19th Amendment, the one that guarantees women's suffrage, was ratified. She was born into Jim Crow, 36 years after the Emancipation Proclamation and just a few minutes before the Great Depression. What I'm saying is Mari Evans saw this country trying to straighten its tie and trying to comb its hair, trying to look respectable, even as it subjugated Black and brown people on its way to manifest destiny. No way America was fooling her. We can't confuse progress with movement, she said, talking about the small concessions given to Black people during civil rights. And so now I have been thinking about her poem, The Elders. And I couldn't find an audio version of it, but I found a video. So I want to share this video of Mari Evans reading her poem, The Elders, assuming that I'm able to make it work. All right. Okay, I got it. Sorry, everybody. This is coming from the Furious Flower Conference, which is a wonderful conference of Black poetry at James Madison University. And they have it on their website, so I couldn't just take the video.
With their bad feet and their gray hair and amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Cardboard fans with a colored family, seasonal gift from Baker's Funeral Home, stirring heat and hallelujahs. No hiding place down here, son. I asked Jesus to change your name, child. Help me, Jesus, through one more day. And yes, ma'am, I don't mind working late again. And no, sir, I'm feeling fine. It'd be a long time before you need a younger man to work this job. And swing low, sweet chariot, Lord, somewhere there's a crown for me. Be our heritage, our strength, the way they moved from can to can't, preparing the way, throwing down the road, say, want you to have more than I had, child. Say, be more than I am. Go where there ain't no limits. See you standing top of that mountain, looking down, with their bad feet and their gray hair, bony symbols of indomitable will. Having triumphed over Gory, endured the middle passage, survived cotton and cane branding iron and bullwhip, crossed deep river into Canaan, strode through Dust Bowl and Depression, smiled through smoking Watts and Newark, smoldering Detroit, and locked old arms with young to sing, surely we shall overcome. And now be saying, walk together, children. We went through the undergrowth with only cane knives, and we cut it down to size. Fight the fight, wage the wars, and win. It's in your blood. With their bad feet and their gray hair, they be our heritage, our strength, torn tents pitched at the foot of the mountain, having moved from can to can't. They be our national treasure. They be our priceless charge.
It makes me so happy to get to see her here as we're talking about her, and also hear those words. So much history in one poem, with their bad feet and their gray hair, bony symbols of indomitable will, having triumphed over Gory, endured the middle passage, survived cotton and cane, branded iron and bullwhip. Having endured all of this, after having given us all of this, it's our turn to give back to the elders with our hands and our voices and our praise. Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Richard Wright, Mari Evans, the first Black Poet Laureate of Indiana, Wendell Parker, Etheridge Knight. It's our turn to carry their words in our mouths, to take their poetry and hold it as close as a good friend. That's the idea of ancestry, right? Something we carry whether we want to or not. Indianapolis' own Etheridge Knight felt that way. In a lot of ways, Knight was the embodiment of a Black poet, someone who needed poetry simply to survive in the world. He said, I died in Korea from a shrapnel wound and narcotics resurrected me. I died in 1960 from a prison sentence and poetry brought me back to life. He and his family ended up in Indianapolis in the middle part of the 20th century as part of the Great Migration. Before really settling down here, Etheridge Knight spent some time in the military, and like the previous quote suggests, the man developed an addiction to heroin before ending up in prison for robbery. I'm laying out all these biographical details because they are an origin story. If Mari Evans was a jazz musician and brought improvisation and revision to the page, Etheridge Knight brought obsessiveness and need from his former life. He wrote one of his most famous poems, The Idea of Ancestry, while in solitary confinement at the Indiana State Penitentiary in Terre Haute. The point of prison, according to John Edgar Wideman, is to take time from someone. Freedom too, but you can get that back, sort of. Time is the thing. 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, and 3 months, gone, and it can never come back. No amount of poetry can bring it back. Meanwhile, the rest of the world keeps moving and building. Etheridge Knight used that timelessness in prison to write letters and poems and letters to other poets. He wrote letters to Gwendolyn Brooks, who wrote him back with words of encouragement and suggestions for his work. He wrote to Dudley Randall, too. And there it is, Ms. Brooks, Dudley Randall, the same people who have been doing the work of mentoring and inspiring new generations of Black poets. Time was the thing that drew me to Etheridge Knight's poetry, and the desperation for it, the cataloging of it through lost loves and protests, old and new. Family too, in the ways they inspire and also demand things of us. There are the elders again with their gray hair and unwavering expectations for us on the world and on the page and in the world. I never met Etheridge Knight off the page, but his poem Feeling Fucked Up was transformative for me. I have it hanging on my office wall, so it's right over there, but it'd be silly for me to show it to you. And it's a reminder every time I see it that I need to go harder, and I need to write with a purpose that is both made with fire and humility. Because of the language in the poem, I mean, I barely didn't even want to say the title. I'm not going to share that one. But the poem is about addiction. It's about need, and it's about revolution, and it's about need again. Themes that are the center of everything for Etheridge Knight. In an interview with in Callaloo Literary Magazine, Knight said, "I live by poeting. I live from the people. I don't do anything but poet. Sometimes people attach me to universities, but if I don't poet, then I am a thief, because that's what I was doing before I was poeting. I don't know anything else to do but hustle or poet. I live by poeting." He said, and I keep thinking that through poeting, he's able to manage the weight of now while attending to what came before. And it's about time again, the time between grandparents and me, the time between and distance between the 47 pictures on Etheridge Knight's cell wall and the actual people represented in those pictures. Distance as long as humans have kept track of days. They are with us and we are with them. So here's Etheridge Knight reading the idea of ancestry, and I'm going to share the poem with you too, so that you can read along if you don't know it. It's such a gorgeous piece of work. William Brooks again, Mari Evans, Etheridge Knight. So this is a 2-slide poem.
I started making up this poem when I was in solitary one time. After being called by a number for 5 years, 30,562, I was beginning to forget who I was. The idea of ancestry. Taped to the wall of my cell are 47 pictures, 47 black faces. My father, mother, grandmothers, one dead, grandfathers, both dead, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, cousins, first and second, nieces and nephews. They stare across the space at me, sprawling on my bunk. I know their dark eyes, they know mine. I know their style, they know mine. I am all of them, they are all of me. They are farmers, I am a thief. I am me, they are thee. I have at one time or another been in love with my mother, one grandmother, 2 sisters, 2 aunts, one went to the asylum, and 5 cousins. I am now in love with a 7-year-old niece. She sends me letters written in large block print, and her picture is the only one that smiles at me. I have the same name as one grandfather, 3 cousins, 3 nephews, and 1 uncle. The uncle disappeared when he was 15, just took off and caught a freight, they say. He's discussed each year when the family has a reunion. He causes uneasiness in the clan. He is an empty space. My father's mother, who is 93 and who keeps the family Bible with everybody's birth dates and death dates in it, always mentions him. There's no place in her Bible for whereabouts unknown. I started making up this poem when I was in solitary one time. After being called by a number for 5 years, I started making up this poem when I was in solitary one time. I started making up this poem when I was in solitary one time. After being called by a number.
Looks like I got myself caught in a loop. So I guess we're not going to get to hear the rest of it, unfortunately. But for those of you who know, the second half of it is even more important than the first because it clarifies everything. You can find the recording of this online at the Poetry Foundation, as well as on the anthology Deep Like the Rivers. Each fall, the graves of my grandfathers call to me. The brown hills and red gullies of Mississippi send out their electric messages, he said. The idea of ancestry is about ancestry, but it's also about survival, and it's about community, real and imagined. One of the many off-the-page gifts Etheridge Knight gave to Indianapolis were his Poetry for the People workshops. They are modeled after June Jordan's workshops of the same name and were meant to be a space of creation and catharsis. Anybody who wanted to write could come and write. Sometimes they would be at a bar, sometimes they'd be at Etheridge Knight's house, but they would always be welcoming to anyone who wanted to come. I was in middle school and high school, probably playing pickup ball at Bertha Ross Park or someplace like that in the last years of Knight's Poetry for the People workshops. I hadn't even started writing yet anyway, so I wouldn't have known what I was missing until later. But when I became poet laureate, I decided that I wanted to do something in honor of that, in support of it. So I hosted monthly workshops at the Center for Black Literature and Culture that were inspired by Knight's work. I wanted to make a space for anybody with an interest to come and write and protest and create community, because that's what I needed. That's what we all need, especially now. And that's the thing that ties Gwendolyn Brooks, that ties Mari Evans and Etheridge Knight, me, you, all of us together in this long hall of protest and uplift. We're all here pushing back thanks to the spirits and words pushing us up. We're all here building because of their work. It's like Newton's first law of motion, the one that says we keep going with the momentum we've been given until something of equal power slows us down. And that's the thing. There's no equal power to Black poetry, not the government, not these racists, not the critics or those baggy suited businessmen trying to foreclose on everything, not the cops or their nightsticks, not the domesticated readers with their quizzical looks. None of them are strong enough to stop this thing we've been given unless we let them. And we won't, with Gwendolyn Brooks, with Mari Evans, with Etheridge Knight, with Maya Angelou, with this panel of writers and all the writers on the shelves at the Center for Black Literature and Culture, leaning into us and telling us not to stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. That was so much to unpack, and so many powerful poets that you shared with us, and even more powerful to hear them in their own voice. And so we thank you for your support of the Center for Black Literature and Culture and everything that you've poured into our edifice and the community at large. What we will do now is do a short recap of where we've been as an organization, and more importantly, where we're going in the future. So I will pull up my slideshow. So just a moment. So we are located at Central Library at 40 East St. Clair in the R.B. Annis Reading Room. We would not be able to do any of the wonderful programs we have without the support of Lilly Endowment and the Indianapolis Public Library Foundation. I would like to say that the Center for Black Literature and Culture is an overnight success that started in 1978. We stand on the shoulders of the African American History Committee, which started in 1978 with 8 members. During that time, there have been programs, there have been book discussions, there have been movie viewings, and just a lot of incredible work, including Meet the Artists, as well as Fall Fest. This is a picture of the grand opening in 2017. And also in this picture is Roland S. Martin, who is our keynote speaker, as well as, most importantly, the African American History Committee. If you know these individuals and see them out in the community, please thank them for all of their hard work. So I'm going to go quickly through some flyers that show you things that we've done over the last 3 years. We had an amazing book fest with Miss Pat, who's a comedian. We had a discussion of Miseducation of the Negro. We also had our second anniversary where we focused on the Crispus Attucks championship team. And that was an amazing event with Henry Robertson, John Gibson, and Bill Hampton. We also talked about African Americans in the vote this year. We know that's very important, and I would encourage everyone to vote, get a plan. You have plenty of time to vote. Don't wait until November the 3rd, but try to vote early. We had our book fest this year. We also talked about Blacks in the vote, as well as having poetry and social action in this age of coronavirus. Here's another picture of our opening. This is a jarring picture from the time that we're looking at right now where we can't be in communion together, but this was an amazing event. We were wall to wall and shoulder to shoulder, but it was just a time of great celebration. And I can't wait till we can get back to something like that again. RLR Associates is the design team who helped to bring our vision to life. And Andre Parnell was the lead of that project, and Rod Reed is the principal of that organization. So this is our epicenter, which is a talking drum. And I encourage everyone to come out to the Center for Black Literature and Culture. We are open even during this time of coronavirus, but you can also check us out digitally and do a virtual tour. And I'll show you that screen at the very end. These are Kabir storyteller drummers who drummed us into the space, and that was such a special time. We want to pay homage to Baba Kabir, who's in the green shirt with the white hat. He has gone on to be with the ancestors, but we still feel his presence in the space. And here we have Madam Walker and the Avenue. We want to bring back the power of the Avenue and make sure that that history is not lost. It was a social place. It was a place with houses of worship and nightclubs and businesses. It was just a really, really vibrant place. And here's our wall of honor with individuals who are connected to Indianapolis and Indiana. And then the south end, where you can see the quilts that rotate on a quarterly basis. We use the Center for Black Literature and Culture in a lot of different ways. We have programs. What you see right now is a book club conference. And so different book clubs in the city were able to share when they meet, what their focus is. And so this was an amazing time. And we did this during one of our Book Fest programs in June. This is in the center, and this is an area that's dedicated to Miss Mari. And so that is her Kinara, her own personal Kinara, which is on loan from her family. And so she used that for her Kwanzaa celebrations, and we're honored that we are able to do that as well. And that's the postage stamp that Miss Ethel referred to when she was speaking of Miss Mari. The Madam Walker story was something that we did last year that was very powerful, and that was done by Freetown Village, and this is one of their actors. This was a very popular program, and we had people of all ages to come and experience that. This is Jerry Harkness doing an author talk in December of 2018. This is a great visual of the room. So if you've not been able to come out and experience this area for yourself, we encourage you to do that. There's some scanning that we were doing for a project. And so now I want to talk a little bit about phase 2, which will be a more interactive segment of our space. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button. Okay. And so this will be more interactive. And so what we're looking at with this space is to focus on different areas, the Indianapolis Black heritage, Black literature, Black culture, and the African diaspora. We're going to have physical kiosks in the space as well as an interface online. So literally you'll be able to take the CBLC anywhere you have internet access. And so this is one example of one of the screensavers, and Maya Angelou is one of the individuals whose picture and information is displayed in our space. So we'll be able to have story titles. You'll be able to dig deeper into the story of these individuals, being able to hear them speak as much as we did today, their own poetry, hear Miss Mari play the piano, just do a deeper dive into their story, because ultimately that's what the Center for Black Literature is. It's all about depth to learn as much as you can about these heroes and sheroes. We do focus on the African diaspora and its impact all over the world, and we think that's important. And so anyone who's connected to Africa, who is of African descent, we want them to feel at home in our space. We've mentioned many times that we're both windows and mirrors. So windows, if you are not a part of the African diaspora, so you can learn about our rich culture and heritage. And mirrors, if you are a part of the African diaspora, you can see yourself reflected in powerful and positive ways. And that term was coined by Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop. And if you're interested in learning more about her, she has an article online, Multicultural Children's Literature, Where Are We? So Black history is global history, and we want to make sure that we remember that. It is beyond February. February is just an entree, and we want to talk about Black History 365. We've talked a lot about the 1619 Project over the last year. That's definitely something to delve into. As I said, we're located at Central Library. CBLC is open whenever Central is open. We have different hours now, and those are shown on the screen. And you can feel free to reach out to get that information online, or you can call 317-275-4100. And I just want to thank right now all of the people that participated in today's program, especially the NDPL staff who've worked so hard to support this event, and especially the community who's come out to listen and interact with us today. You can check out CBLC books on our card catalog. You can reserve them and have them sent to any branch that's convenient to you. You can do digital books and audio books, and also physical books. And here is our platform for our ebooks and audiobooks. That's Libby. And you can go to a guide for books that are specifically focused on the Center for Black Literature and Culture, which makes it easy to find those books. I just want to thank everyone for taking time to listen to that. And again, if you want to get a virtual tour, please go to ndpl.org/CBLC. And now we will have Chantel Massey to come in her own way. She is a local poet, and I'll let her introduce herself. Chantel, take it away. Okay, we're going to wait just a few minutes for Chantel.
Hello. I'm trying to turn on my camera. Okay. Well, hello, my name is Chantel Massey. I am a poet, teaching artist, and educator. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hi, I'm a poet, teaching artist, and educator here, based in Indianapolis. And so I am glad to be here and be in company with all these wonderful writers to celebrate our ancestors and those whose shoulders we stand on. And so today I come to you to pay homage to June Jordan, whose work has immensely helped me survive, especially during this time. And so two pieces that I'm going to share with you. The first one is a poem for South African women. And so, yeah, I'll go ahead and share. Commemoration of the 40,000 women and children who August 9th, 1956, presented themselves in bodily protest against the dumb past and capital of apartheid, presented at the United Nations, August 9th, 1978. Our own shadows disappear as the feet of thousands by the tens of thousands pound the fallow land into new dust that, rising like a marvelous pollen, will be fertile, even as the first woman, whispering imagination to the trees around her, made for righteous fruit, from such deliberate defense of life as still, as no other still, will, claim, inferior to any other safety in the world. The whispers too, they, intimate to the inmost ear of every spirit, now aroused, they, carousing in ferocious affirmation of all peaceable and loving amplitude, Sound, a certainly unbounded heat from a baptismal smoke where, yes, there will be fire. And the babies cease alarm as mothers, raising arms, and heart high as the stars so far unseen, nevertheless, hurl into the universe, a moving force, irreversible as light years traveling to the open eye. And who will join this standing up? And the ones who stood without sweet company will sing and sing back into the mountains, and if necessary, even under the sea. We are the ones we have been waiting for. So yes, that was a poem for South African women by Jean Jordan. It can be found online, and I am reading it from Directed by Desire, which is a collection of poetry by Jean Jordan. And next, I'm going to read from her book, Some of Us Did Not Die, the essay, Many Rivers to Cross. Just a short part of it. And so just to give you a little more history, this is her exploring and paying homage to other women during the time of finding out about the passing and suicide of her mother. And so this is what she had to say to the women who have helped her survive. I wanted to be strong. I never wanted to be weak again as long as I lived. I thought about my mother and her suicide, and I thought about how my father could not tell whether she was dead or alive. I wanted to get well, and I wanted to do so as strong, and I wanted to do so as soon as I was strong again. Actually, what I wanted to do was I wanted to live my life so that people would know unmistakably that I am alive. So that when I finally die, people will know the difference for sure between my living and my death. And I thought about the idea of my mother as a good woman, and I rejected that because I don't see why it's a good thing when you give up, or when you cooperate with those who hate you, or when you polish and iron and mend and endlessly mollify for the sake of the people who love the way that you kill yourself day by day silently. And I think all of this is really about women and work. Certainly, this is all about me as a woman in my life work. I mean, I'm not sure my mother's suicide was something extraordinary. Perhaps most women must deal with a similar inheritance, the legacy of a woman whose death you cannot possibly pinpoint because she died so many, many times. And because even before she became my mother, the life of that woman was taken. I say it was taken away. And really, it was to honor my mother that I did fight with my father, that man who could not tell the living from the dead. And really, it was to honor Mrs. Hazel Griffin and my cousin Valerie and all the women I love, including myself, that I am working for the courage to admit the truth that Bertolt Brecht has written. He says, it takes courage to say that the good were defeated, not because they were good, but because they were weak. I cherish the mercy and the grace of women's work, but I know there is new work that we must undertake as well. That new work will make defeat detestable to us. That new women's work will mean we will not die trying to stand up. We will live that way, standing up. I came too late to help my mother to her feet. But by way of everlasting thanks to all the women who have helped me to stay alive, I am working to never be late again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chantel. We really appreciate those two poems that you shared with us, and there were people that I had not heard of before. So again, this is really a masterclass and something that we can all learn from. The next thing that we're going to have is our writer's workshop, and we're going to have Adrienne to explain that for everyone. So everyone at home that's viewing, you might want to get out a piece of paper or something to jot some notes down on so that you can learn from what our masters are going to be sharing with us today. Adrian, take it away.
Peace, everybody. It's good to see you again. Good to be listening to everyone and the beautiful work. Chantal, that was incredible. So we wanted to, as a group of writers, wanted to come back with something for you at the end of this, to try to find a way to share what we've learned, but also to give you something to work on your own, those of you who are writers, to build and keep building on these shoulders. And so I asked each of the poets who were presenting to come up with a quick poetry prompt for you, to maybe get your writing motivated. So I'm going to just ask them to explain their prompts and share these writing possibilities with you, and then at the very end I'll share a quick one of my own. Black, could you start?
Yeah, my prompt has shape shifted throughout this entire event, so I'm kind of making this up on the spot. I did have one, but it's not sufficient for me anymore, so I'm gonna talk it through and then I'll name the prompt, like the exact prompt at the end. So initially my prompt was, what if the blues could talk? But then I thought that through, and I guess more I was thinking about it and really just how I felt for a while, like the blues isn't something that Black people created, it's something that we named. So what I mean by that is our experiences, we named our experiences the blues. And that wasn't given, the blues was given to us, by America, by oppression, and the conditions created the lives that we experience. And all those experiences are us naming the blues. And we do that through poetry, we do that through music, we do that through so many different ways to contextualize what we're going through. So instead of it being, if the blues could talk, I guess the prompt would be name the blues. Just simple as that. Like, what is the blues? What does that look like? I mean, it could be personified in an actual person. It could be personified in a system. It could be an institution. But what is the blues? What gives you the blues? What requires you to experience the blues? And that's a variety of things, not just even in America, but across the globe. But like, what does that look like for you? So simply just name the blues. You can do that in a haiku. You can do that in an entire essay. You could do that in a book. I mean, we've already done all these things, right? So I'm saying, like, just name it, whatever that means for you. Just name the blues. Just very simple.
I love that. That's amazing. And you mentioned Amiri Baraka's Blues People too, right? I guess he was still Leroy Jones back then, but that's another thing to take along. After the poem's written, go find the book and check that bad boy out. That's great. I'm gonna run through all these again at the end too, just to shout it out. So naming the blues. Thank you for that, Black. That's great. Chantal, could you step in on this?
Yeah. So the prompts that I was thinking, again, more in alignment with June Jordan. I guess my question would be, or my prompt would be, because it was more so about community, but what are the many rivers that you have crossed? Do you cross them alone? Who do you cross them for? Because a lot of June Jordan's work is very urgent in community and very much call to action. And so that would be my prompt for the writers out there who are interested in just exploring more of their own work and just trying to find something to write about during this time. So what are the many rivers that you have crossed? How did you cross them? Did you cross them alone? Who did you cross them for? What started you on the path to cross that river? And so that's pretty much my prompt in a in a short little group of questions to those writers out there. So yeah.
I love that. I have that June Jordan reader. I think it's called It's On, and it's a collected book of like her writings, like just poems, but essays also and things like that too. I was trying to find it on my shelf to hold it up for everybody.
This is one of them. Some of Us Did Not Die. It's literally been like my Bible
So
during
good.
the pandemic.
Well, we were, I was talking about the Etheridge Knight's Poetry for the People, but he got that from June Jordan, right? I mean, this idea that you could create a community workshop and anybody who wants to come can write, but there are rules to it. It's not just everybody comes in. There are specific things to empower writers and also to help it be a little more critical, right?
Yes.
Because she's all about giving voices to helping people who don't have voices to find their own.
Yeah, she's very much about radicalizing language. Like, how can you utilize language for yourself as a writer in your community? Once you leave this workshop, what are you leaving with and why? And really, like, if you just look at her work, she's just so, I guess she just really challenges you and really encourages you to be a revolutionary in your own right. Like, just figure out what that means for yourself, whether it be a poet, but she also makes sure that if you choose to be a poet, you have to do the work. They go hand in hand. So yes, I love her.
That's so great. Thank you for sharing that, Chantel.
No problem.
That's really wonderful. So Manad, could you share your prompt?
Okay. Yes. Thank you. So I was thinking about, and sort of several people echoed the sentiment today about Black writers, and Two Black was talking about the activism that just came along with being a Black writer, and that just really being integrated with the tradition. And so these writers were naturally reflecting the times. And so I was thinking that, in addition to sort of writing for the writer being this tool in reflecting the times, that it's also, and it has felt like for me, this sort of inner compass that helps me to name where I am, like this sort of location, like where am I right now? Who am I right now? And so just even thinking about this year of 2020, this unprecedented year that we are living in and that we have lived through thus far, thinking about the Maya Angelou poem and the title of her autobiography, Still I Rise, asking yourself, what still rises in you? Like what? So actually naming that, what is still emerging? What is still alive? What is still present with you? Through this year, there have been so many losses, right? And through loss there is transformation of the identity and who we think that we are, and we shed these layers. And then poetry is that practice that helps us to call ourselves into the present moment and say, oh, you know what, wow, I'm no longer this, or I'm no longer maybe what I thought that I was, or I no longer need this, but this is who I am now. And oftentimes I didn't even know that until I wrote it down, because poetry is the teacher. It teaches us what we need to know. So just asking that question, what still rises within me, giving it a name, giving it a noun, would be the prompt.
I love that. I'm thinking about the ways in which, that's what, a way to catalog resilience. You know what I mean? Like, let's make a list of all the things that are bigger than this in us, that are more substantial or somehow able to survive despite the sort of nonsense that we've been dealing with in one way or another. I feel like we could change the year and it's going to be different years, same problems. It looks in this right now, it just looks different than it had before. You know, I know this isn't the time because we're talking about poetry prompts, but I'm also thinking about how many people around me have felt comfortable sharing their racism writ large that wouldn't have done that, you know, maybe 7 or 8 years. There, you know, so one of the things that survives me is still the wonder at how some people can be. Like, I'm just like, I'm still somebody, like, you know, trying to, how's somebody gonna be like this in the world? But yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you brought in Maya Angelou too. It's just, that's it, you know. So I'm gonna circle back and name all of these again in a second, but thank you for that, Manada. I appreciate you. All right, so I'm gonna just interject really quickly with my prompt now, because Ms. Ethel and Allison both have visuals that they're attached to theirs. And so I have a little bit of a visual, but it's really just a poem. So I'm going to pull this back up and hopefully I won't have any of the same problems I did before. I wanted to use Etheridge Knight as a model for a new kind of poem. And so one of the things that poetry is for me, and I hope it is for other people, is a way to answer questions. And so I'm always trying to figure out what the question is that's being asked by the poem and how it's being answered by the poet. When you flip it as a writer, you know, what questions don't you know the answer to, and how do you answer them inside of a poem? And so I'm going to bring this slideshow back up just really quickly. And you, of course, this is something that you can do at home on your own, because you can find the idea of ancestry as a poem. It's a very simple prompt. What I want you to do as writers is, I want you to look around your writing space, and I want you to catalog to begin with what's on your walls, and then go wherever that takes you. So when I look around my office, I've got Etheridge Knight's poem that I mentioned earlier. I got a picture of Basquiat, a Basquiat painting called Trumpet on one wall. I've got a painting of a friend did on another wall. I've got the R-rated version of the Jimi Hendrix album, Electric Ladyland, which didn't get released in the US because it was ruled obscene, but really it's just topless women. So I've got these images around me, and I look at them and they lead me to a particular place about family and about friends and about music and censorship and art and lots of different things. But what I want for you to do is catalog your own space. I'm sure there'll be different things. Maybe there are pictures of family like there were in Etheridge Knight's poem and the one we're looking at. 47 pictures, he said, and then he catalogs them. So the prompt is for you to do the same thing. Sit in your workspace, look around, and catalog that space and see what questions it asks you. Yeah, and remember, idea of ancestry, if you don't have this poem, it's on the Poetry Foundation website. It's on poets.org. It's even better, it's in the collected Etheridge Knight. I'd rather that you had the book than getting it online, but these are some of the places you can find it. Okay, so the last two poets who are here to share a little bit of inspiration with you are Allison Horton and Ethel McCain. And Nisha, you said that there's a visual for this, right?
Yes, there is. Would you like Allison to go first?
Yeah, that seems right.
Okay, we can go ahead and cue Allison's prompt up, and then Allison can come online. Allison, you can go ahead and start explaining, and we'll cue it up.
Sure. So, Langston Hughes said the only prerequisite to writing poetry is having something to say. So, my prompts are hoping that you will have something to say either about yourself in celebration or in celebration of somebody else. And so, I'm a Black woman. You can write a poem in which you use Evan's poem as a springboard to your own unique experience by responding to the question, who are you? Right? If we can all come through the womb of our own identity, we've got an opportunity to make a powerful statement that reaches somebody else, like, I am a Black woman. So you can begin your poem with the line, I am a Black woman. I am a Black man. I'm a brown woman. whatever you fill in those blanks with, just from there, be original and specific to your reality. Tell your story, tell the music of your song, all taken from the poem. And within the poem, there was also a channeling of ancestors. So celebrate them and yourself and defy the odds in some way. And someplace in there, I would say, make yourself tall as a cypress and strong beyond definition. And mirror, I would say, the poem through your own reality. So that's that first one. And the second one is just a tribute invitation, write a poem in which you pay homage to someone on whose shoulders you stand. That might be a grandmother, that might be an uncle, might be an aunt. Just celebrate a beloved figure in your midst who's influenced the person that you are today.
Those are so good, Allison. I love, anything where we show love to those who come before us is always like, it's top of my list. But the idea of writing an ode to someone, like showing love to them, whether they are a public figure, like you talked about, or you mentioned maybe it's your grandfather, your mother, it might be the person who lives across the street who made you snacks when you came home. It could be any kind of person that inspired you and got you here, because they all helped. I love this so much. And I am we need more of these. We need more poems that define us. And so I'm a Black Woman is in that book, of course, but it's also in Continuum, which has got so much really wonderful stuff. Is there another book by Ms. Mari that you would suggest to people they look at, or one of Baba Haki's books? I just want to make sure we leave these folk with text too.
Definitely, I would say Don't Cry Scream.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely that one. And because there's a poet's handbook at the very end of that book that's a great guide, tips and steps to keep writing and writing to your truth. And Mari Evans, I gotta pick. So A Dark and Splendid Mass. And A Night Star. No, A Dark and Splendid Mass and Clariday's Concept, because getting an essayist and she brings it really close to home, especially if you're in the Midwest, and close to her own home. So I think that's a great lens to look through yourself as an artist, and also Ms. Evans.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you, Allison. I appreciate you sharing that. Ms. Ethel, would you feel comfortable talking about your prompt now?
Yes, I would. Are you going to cue it up, or I can just go like it is now? It doesn't have to be cued. I got it in front of me. Which, excuse the misspelling in the poor Maya's name. Anyhow, thinking of this poem, I say, thinking on Maya Angelou's poem, Still I Rise. Write your own attitude poem about being a Black person in America today, and how we seem to continue rising in public offices, rising in private struggles through one of this nation's most tumultuous eras ever. And when I thought of this, I call this an attitude poem because Maya starts off, you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. In other words, I don't care what you say about me, that I'm going to achieve anyway. And I think writers, I would encourage writers out there to find your space for an attitude poem, because I say attitude poetry has a healing effect. I believe that sometimes we write, I know I did, all through life, I wrote to heal my spirit in hard times, in bad times. And I'm sure Maya was thinking about the things that were going on during her times and the things that we've been through, certainly as women, as Black women, the things we've been through. I encourage men and women, write your attitude poem, the poem that says, yes, copying kind of out of the spirit of Maya. I have done much. I have survived. You have done much to me, but I'm still surviving. And that survival poem can be cathartic, you know. I think. I tell my young people, I work with young people a lot, I tell them, sit down and write, journal. Sometimes journaling has a healing effect. And I think this poem, for me, she is my favorite. She's my very favorite poet, Maya Angelou is. And she certainly, I guess, has the kind of poetry that emboldens you to tell those who would work against you in life, to tell them, I don't care what you do to me, I still can get through this life well. I still can succeed. So do whatever you want to do to me, is what she says. She says in part of it, you may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I rise. And I think we need that attitude sometimes in poetry. And I like her poetry because I like not only reading it, but delivering it. I think the way we do poetry now, it's not just to be, I have a poem that says, poetry is not to be just written in books where they may lie on shelves and never be read. But I like the way we do open mic and do poetry like what we have done today, to share, write your poetry in a way that it can be shared and people can see your spirit of what you mean in this poetry on your face. And they can feel your poetry in your voice. And I feel that's what Maya Angelou's poetry does, especially in this piece. And that's why I call it a healing poem, an attitude poem, getting things off your chest poem. In times like these, there's so much going on. And if I'm going too long, you all can let me, but there's so much we have to get used to. As poets now, this season is ripe for all kinds of rich poetry because there's so much going on that has never gone on before. There are things that we're experiencing in shopping and worshiping and even being with our family. There's so much to write about. Those of you out there, write about how you feel about these upcoming holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving, how society and the things that are going on, the protocols for COVID-19 may not suggest that you and your family get together with 25 or 30 people around the Thanksgiving table like you're accustomed to. You know, these kinds of things have an effect on us. Write about these times with attitude. That's pretty much it.
I love it. I love it. So what you were saying, I had never thought about it until you just were saying that reading Maya Angelou's work, reading Lucille Clifton's work, Etheridge Knight, Maria. Right. When I read it, I feel powerful. You know what I mean? Like it empowers me, even though those words aren't mine. And so perhaps there is something being transferred there. And definitely with the attitude poem. When you said the first poem I thought of was Lucille Clifton's Homage to My Hips. She says, these are magic hips. They're mighty hips. like I just said, I was like, that's exactly it. Everybody needs to write that. So I'm going to thank you for that, Ms. Evel. That was amazing. I'm going to run really quickly through and just summarize all of these again for those of you who are listening, and then turn it back over to Nichelle. So Too Black had this really wonderful prompt to get you to start thinking about the blues and what the blues look like. And he suggested you take the chance and try to name the blues in a poem. That's really great. And also Blues People, and also Gil Scott-Heron, and also Etheridge Knight. Chantel said that she asked the question, what rivers have you crossed? Were you alone? Were you in person? What did that look like? Write a poem about the rivers that you have crossed. Manan said, what still rises in you? In this time of mess and futility and masks and everything else, what still rises? Turn that into a poem. I was telling you to go back and read Etheridge Knight and respond to his poem by writing around your space. Name your space and claim it in a poem. Allison said she gave you two separate prompts. One, to use Mari Evans' I Am a Black Woman to respond to the question, who are you? And the second one was to write an ode in honor of someone. It doesn't have to be a public person. It can be somebody in your private life. And then sorry about that. I just got muted. The last prompt that we got was from Ms. Evelyn. She said, write an attitude poem. Everybody has one. Everyone needs one right now. So write one in the ways that the people who came before us would want you to. Thank you all. Thank you, writers, and thank you, listeners, for sharing this space with us.
Thank you so much, Adrian. And a huge thank you to everyone on the panel. I know that we're in a virtual space, but I still want everyone to send out some love and some positive energy. Put it in the chat, whether you're on Facebook Live or you're on YouTube. You know, shout out Adrian and Miss Ethel and Allison and Manan and Chantel and Black for everything that they poured into us. I don't know how rare of a time this is, if you understand that, but you have been able to have a masterclass with 6 amazing poets who have been able to really give you some charges, some prompts. So anyone that's trying to be a writer, anyone who enjoys writing, this is an amazing time for you to kind of unpack some things and really tap into what we're doing right now. And so I want to ask everyone to support artists, support poets, especially local artists and poets. So reach out to them for programming, show them love, buy their work. Just show them that you care about them, because this is a challenging career, although it's very important. And so we want to lift them up as they do this work. And so I would be remiss with this topic being on whose shoulders we stand, for me not to say on whose shoulders I stand. So I come here as the daughter of Sylvia and the daughter of Ronzo, and the daughter of many other generations. And I am where I am today because of everything that they poured into me. And so, as Adrian said, I would be remiss to say that I got here by myself. So I just want to thank the community and all the support that they've given us. And so right now we're going to let the editor of the Indianapolis Recorder, which is celebrating their 125th year of service to our community, give us some final remarks. And then I will close out the program after her.
Thank you, Nichelle, and just wow. Thank you to all the poets. Poetry is not my forte. I am not that kind of writer, but just listening to you guys inspired me, and I'm about ready to go and write my attitude poem right now because I'm fired up. It's just so awesome to just hear so many amazing, talented people right here in our city, and to realize how healing poetry is, how revolutionary poetry is, and how protest also is the voice. Poems are the voice of protest. I think we often forget that when we think about poetry, and I think sometimes we kind of get caught up in what we've been taught are great poets, and we're often not taught about our people who are some amazing poets. So just thank you guys for all of that. Thank you again, Nichelle, for allowing the Recorder to be a part of your 3rd anniversary. It's just amazing what you guys are doing, and just so proud to be a part of it. And again, the Recorder is 125 years old. We are so proud of our history. Started in 1895 as a 2-page church bulletin, and we've grown over the years, obviously, and we are still here. So subscription to the Recorder is only $39 a year, $39 a year. I know many people don't subscribe to papers anymore and don't get the paper, but if you do, you're supporting an organization, you're supporting a business, a Black-owned business, an entity that's been around fighting for our people for over a century. And it's $39 a month. That's really not that. $39 a year. I'm sorry. That's really not that much. That's like you go out to eat one time and you spend about $39. So again, please support the Recorder. We're always trying to uplift, educate, empower, entertain, and engage our community. So thank you again.
So 2020 is all about I was on mute or I couldn't get my camera off. So I'll move forward. So thank you so much, Oshia, for being here with us today. And I don't know if people realize it, but once the pandemic started, the Recorder redoubled their efforts. They have held a number of webinars giving important information to us in the community. And I know that I have learned a lot by what they are sharing. And so I would encourage everyone to subscribe, like them on Facebook, follow them. And she just told us that it's $39 for an entire year. So that's less than $1 a week. And so we have to put our money where our mouth is, and we have to support Black media. And so the Indianapolis Recorder is doing some really, really important work. I just want to again thank the Indianapolis Public Library staff, especially the staff at Central Library. I want to thank Jim Myers, who's helping us today, as well as Michael Torres, the communication staff, Katie Buloff and Joe Bakke and Kelly Terry, and everyone else who has come out and supported us. So you're seeing me as the face of the Center for Black Literature and Culture, but I stand with hundreds of people behind me doing this important work. Again, support our poets. I want you to give them some love in the chat and reach out to them. I also want to make sure that everybody is going to vote. So election day is November 3rd, but you don't have to wait till then because we have early voting here in Indiana and Marion County. So go out there and exercise your right to vote. It's your civic duty. And I am going to end with a poem by Lucille Clifton. And we've talked about her a lot today, but we haven't read any of her poems in its entirety. And so I'll begin. Won't you celebrate with me? Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model born in Babylon, both non-white and woman. What did I see to be except myself? I made it up. Here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight, my other hand, come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. So go out there and look at poetry as resistance and renewal. And thank you so much for joining us today. Bye-bye, everyone.